want to fend for myself, and I want to build people up for them to fend for themselves. Hey everybody, Clark Fredericks here with another edition of the Free Like Me podcast. Guests come on, speak their truth, and leave free like me. We are airing on all the major streaming forums. If you would, please hit the subscribe button. And if you get something out of the podcast, please share it so we can continue to grow and get great guests. Every week, there's a different story of overcoming pain and tragedy and heartache. And this week, we're going all the way to Great Britain to hear the life story of a guy. He was a menace when he was young. He was an absolute menace, a terror of the streets of Great Britain. But he turned it around, and we're going to hear how he did it. We're going to hear his life. This is Paul Venis. Paul, my brother.
Hello, mate. How you doing, brother?
All right. I think, before we start, let me just give the audience, you were K1 kickboxing champion of Great Britain, correct?
Yes.
32-0, 31 knockouts.
Correct. Yeah.
And you wanted to get to, there's a different level of K1 which you were trying to get into, but because you had a criminal background, they wouldn't let you in. Is that what was the other one you wanted to?
Yeah. So I got offered the contract on the Glory K1. I was the only undefeated heavyweight in Britain. I held all the titles. I had the best record in the top 5 rankings in Britain. The guy who was number 1 had only been beat by me. So when the Glory emailed me, what have you got planned? What's your details? When I sent them all my details over, they obviously do like a criminal background check, and obviously I went to prison for firearms, and most of the shows that Glory did were in America. And at the time, I'd only been out of prison like 3 or 4 years, so it was like a big no-no at the time. Do you know what I mean? It was like, yeah, so it put a damper on my traveling.
Did you ever try to reapply?
No. What I did was, because of that, I felt like I'd accomplished everything in K1. I got disheartened, and I retired. I stopped. I just had enough. I just thought, what's the point? Do you know what I mean? Like my target was to fight in Glory K1, travel to the States, travel around across the world, fighting, earning a good living. Where Great Britain, UK. It's a good level of fighting, but there's not much money in the K1 kickboxing. There wasn't much money in it. It was like I was doing all right regarding paying my bills and sponsors and stuff like that, but it just wasn't. It wasn't going to make me financially secure just fighting on the UK scene. I had to travel the seas, had to travel over, and when I got knocked back, I just didn't see the point no more.
Yeah, that's why I was excited to introduce you to the American audience. I don't know how many people I've heard of you, because the title was in Great Britain.
Yeah.
And we stumbled across each other on Instagram, and then I looked, I saw you had a blue check mark next to your name, so I'm like, let me check out who this is that just started following me, and then I saw what you were doing, as a fighter, and I looked into your history, and I'm like, I got to have this guy on the show.
Yeah. Well, I've lost that Instagram since then, haven't I? I've been removed.
Yeah, what the hell keeps happening? You've gone through 4 Instagrams.
Yeah, well, I'm learning now that as a fighter, as a fighter, you get called out by other fighters, and things get said and things get heated and stuff like that, and then 9 times out of 10 on the back and forth, I tend to take it a little bit too far, and I've lost a couple of accounts now. But that's it now. You live and learn. I'm on my new one now, so we just move on. We rebuild and we start again, don't we? That's how it works.
Right. So I think our childhood dictates what we become later on in life. So tell me, the guy who would have an undefeated record, 32-0, 31 knockouts, would grow up as a pudgy, fair-haired kid getting bullied unmercifully. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It seems like in Britain, bullying is a national pastime.
Yeah. Well, listen, so as a child, you just hit the nail on the head. I felt different anyway. I didn't need to be told that I was different. I felt different anyway. You know, I didn't feel like I fitted in anywhere. You know, so I always tried to excel in sports. I always tried to, latch on to girls. You know, all this stuff to try and make myself feel good about myself, because as a child I never liked what was looking back out in the mirror. You know, I never liked looking in the mirror. I was filled with low self-esteem. I had two different coloured eyes. I was ginger. I was overweight. These were the things that played a part in my mind. I didn't need to be told what I was and what I looked like, but sadly it happened. And I got picked on. I got beat up bad every single day at school, to the point where my mum and dad were getting sick of going back and forth to the school. My dad was a big, strong fella. He was a bouncer. He was a doorman, and he was getting sick and tired. And I remember him trying to put like a weapon in my bag and says, when you go to school, fucking pull it out your bag and start hitting the kids back with it. Because there wasn't just one or two children; it was a group, it was a gang. You know, and it took its toll on me. Do you know what I mean? It really did. It really did affect me. Like I was wee in the bed. I don't know. I was filling me with fear. It was filling me. It was really, really frightening. But the main
Bedwetting is a sign of trauma.
yeah. Well, in the middle of all this, I took a real bad beating off some man, some stranger. I was in a
Yeah, I want to go into that. And one of the reasons why I feel like we're brothers is let me just tell you mine before you go into yours. I was around. What age are you talking about where you're getting bullied?
I can never pinpoint the age, but I remember how old I was when I told my dad about the abuse, about the man who violently abused me, violently beat me. I remember telling him weeks and weeks later, I was that young. He was washing my hair with a jug, so the shampoo didn't go in my eyes, so I didn't cry.
So that maybe 8?
Maybe he's younger, mate. Maybe he's younger.
Oh yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Really young.
When I was around, I want to say around 12, we had train tracks by where we lived, and there was an old abandoned trestle that went over the road, and me and a buddy went up there, and we packed a bunch of snowballs in the winter, and we were throwing them down from the trestle, hitting cars and trucks as they went by. And we pelted this one pickup truck with these snowballs, and the guy jams on his brakes, and two guys jump out of the truck and come running up the hill at us where we were throwing the snowballs. Me and my buddy take off in opposite directions running. And this guy caught me in like no time at all because I had a big heavy snowsuit on. And he throws me to the ground, and he just starts punching me and calling me a little fucker and punching me. And he's pelting me, and I just blurt out, "I'm Jay Fredericks' little brother." I had an older brother who was a tough guy, and the guy goes, "What?" I go, "I'm Jay Fredericks' little brother." I'm crying and stuff, and he's like, "Ah, shit." So he yells to his buddy, "Hey, leave that one alone. This is Jay Fredericks' little brother." The guy's like, "Oh, great." So they're like, and then they're like, "Don't tell your brother about this. You shouldn't have been throwing snowballs anyway." And then they took off and left. And I heard your story, and that instantly reminded me of that. So tell me what happened with you.
So where we were from, so there used to be this like little market, where like fruit stalls and toy stalls and stuff like that. And used to sell these I don't know what you call them over here in the States, catapults, slingshots. So you used to get these little slingshots. They were only like plastic little slingshots, and they weren't much. They weren't expensive. And me and my friend used to save up. We used to go get one on a Friday because they wouldn't last long. You'd end up snapping them in a day because they were all the cheap ones. And we did that. So where we went to, it was like dead secluded. None of us were allowed there. We were only young. Like, if our parents found out we were there, they went mad. As we pop me cork coming up. So we goes up to this bridge. It's like a big bridge goes over like that, and underneath it's like a very secluded path with trees and bushes and all that, like really hiding us. And we were doing that. We were firing stones over the bridge and watching them come down the next side. And some of them weren't coming down. We were kind of oblivious that they were hitting cars. Well, they must have been hitting cars. Anyway. So we seen one guy's this big heavy set lad started climbing down the side of the bridge, and I'm just looking at him like that. And I turned around, my other friends had left, boom, gone. They'd seen the danger coming from a mile off, boom, off. I just stood there like a dummy, and he grabbed me and he beat me like like he beat me like it was no one's business. Definitely shouldn't be beating the child that way. Picked me up, slammed me, winded me, spat in me face, stamped on my head, beat me to a pulp to the point where I lost control of my bowels, weed myself, pooed myself. He was picking me up, slamming me. He was trying to drag me up the bridge to his car. He was telling me he was going to kill me. And then he got me halfway up the bridge, let go of me, dropped me. I rolled all the way down the bridge. And then when I got to the bottom, I hit my feet because I was all dazed. I was obviously passing it, going in and out of consciousness. And then all of a sudden, when he dropped me, I woke up. And then he was climbing back down to grab me, and I just ran. Boom. I was just off. And where I was having to run, there was still a good mile to run. And he chased me all the way. Chased me with his fingers on my back, telling me he's going to kill me, all the way out into the open. And then when I did get into the open, into the estate, my friends were at the end and they were shouting, "Run, he's behind you." And he stopped, turned around and ran back off. And as I got to them, I just collapsed. But I remember coming round, and all I was bothered about was not letting my mum and dad find out where I was. Because as a child, you think, I'm going to get more in trouble because it's my fault. It's my fault. I shouldn't have been up there. Even though I still couldn't understand why this man had did this to me, I knew I was going to be in trouble if they found out that I was up there, because I wasn't allowed up there. It was too far from home. It was secluded. No kid should be up there. Shouldn't have been doing what I was doing. So that in my head, that's all I was bothered about. So I was telling my friends, don't tell them tell them we fell off a wall, tell them we fell off something, tell them I fell down some stairs. I don't know, just tell them something. So when I come round in hospital, which I didn't, I just remember collapsing. I come round in hospital a couple of days later. I was in a pretty bad way. Busted head, busted eardrum, busted cheek face, cheekbones and eye sockets and stuff like that. And my dad was just over me and he went, "How did it happen, son?" And I just looked at him like that. And he went, "What wall did you fall off?" And I was like, "Oh, I just wandered on the corner." So I literally told him that I'd fell off a brick wall. My friends had told him. And weeks and weeks had went past. And my dad, like I said, my dad was washing my hair in the bath. He's washing, "Put your head back, son." So he's got his hand on my eyes, so the soap wasn't going in my eyes. And I just says to him, "Dad," I says, "Do you remember when I said I fell off the wall?" He went, yeah, I remember." I went, "I never. Some man beat me up." Oh, man. And he just grabbed me out the bath. He was like, "Where? Oh, like, get out the bath, get out the bath." He nearly ripped the bathroom door off. He was punching the wall. He was going crazy, but he was trying to let me know, "Look, I'm not mad at you, son. Like, why didn't you tell me? Like, no man should ever put his hands on you. You're a child. Like, no man should ever do that. Like, that's wrong." And I was like, "But I was up here. I shouldn't have been up there." He went, "It doesn't matter. It's not your fault. Don't worry. You should have told me." And he dragged me all the way back up to the bridge. And he was stopping cars in the middle of the road going, "Is it him? Is it him?" He was just desperate. He was just so desperate.
He lost his mind.
Yeah. And like, I see it now because I've got kids myself. Do you know what I mean? I think, wow, if my kids ever told me that, I'd be the same. And he was crying. He was hugging me. He was telling me he loved me. He was, oh God, it was horrendous. It was really, really bad. And I didn't see how bad it was until, weeks, months, years later, how it was affecting me, nighttime, the terrors, the way it just changed my personality. The bullies at school they never laid another hand on me, because
Really?
The tables had turned. It was like I just lost all fear and feelings of it was just weird. It was just turned. And, my dad took me to boxing for a couple of weeks. I started to box. And by the time I was 12, 13, going into secondary school, this was in primary school. As I was going into secondary school, I think you was call it high school. As I was going into the second part of schooling, I just turned into a monster. I just turned into this guy that, I didn't care who I hit. I was just violent. I was angry. I had no.
And you think everything changed from that beating?
Yeah.
Definitely, right?
Because I just thought, I'm getting it off kids my own age every day. you know, and really, they weren't really hurting. I was just scared. No one ever really hurt me bad, not as much as he
Not
did.
like that guy did.
Yeah.
And what do you think? Have you thought about what this guy was going to do? He drug you halfway up that hill. Had he gotten you into his car?
That's all I thought about. That was the main thing. What was traumatic for me, because I really thought he would have killed me that day. Like, yeah. I felt like, because he was waking me up, he was slapping me, waking me up, and then he was knocking me out again. It was really traumatic to go over and over and over again in my head. And I think that's what ended up ruining me. That's what stole my childhood, realizing that that man would have definitely killed me that day. You know, and I never knew him. I never seen him again. He was just a stranger. You know, it really, really tore a piece of me away. And, you know, it changed me. It changed me for the worst as a child. It really did. Really did.
So you go from being the bullied kid to this near-death incident, and then now you become someone who is just knocking people out.
Yeah, yeah. So I got to about 13, 14-year-old, and I really started to see how dangerous and how much my potential was. That I was born with a gift where I was bigger than all the kids. You know, I've got a big, massive head and chin. I had that as a child. I've got massive hands. You know, I was a thick-set lad, and now I could box. Now I could fight. You know, and I just used it to my advantage, and I absolutely got addicted to the power, you know, to the reputation, you know, to the name. You know, everything, all that stuff mattered to me. It all mattered to me, you know, and it didn't help. You know, being from the town that I'm from, in the area that I'm from, there was a guy called Lee Duffy. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of that name.
I have.
Yeah.
I have, from listening to your
Yeah.
story.
So there was a guy called Lee Duffy. Now, everyone in the UK knew him. He was like, how can I explain it? You know, I'm trying to think of an American who was like a top. He was Kimbo Slice. Have you ever heard of Kimbo Slice?
Yeah.
So Lee was like that on the UK scene, and he was from my town. I was born on the same street as him. My mum and dad knew him well, and he had a similar story to me, where he had bad trauma from bullying. You know, he was getting beaten by his dad. He had a lot of bad stuff, and it was a similar story to me. And then by the time he was 15, 16, he was a force to be reckoned with, and that was the path I was going on. And all it took was a couple of people to say to me, he's going to be the next Lee Duffy. And bang, it just flipped in my head, where I thought, yeah, that's what I want to be.
That's what I want to be.
That's who I'm going to be. I'm the next Lee Duffy, and I'm on path to be it. You know, and it was a bad path. I see it now, and we'll get to that, why I know how bad it was. But at the time, I absolutely loved it. How much the tables had flipped. You know, and by the time,
I mean, you're still a teenager.
Yes.
Obviously, living at home. Are your parents like saying,
yeah,
you know, Paul, you know, they have to see you're getting in these fights
yeah,
all the time,
yeah.
right?
Well, I come from a tough family anyway. Do you know, like, my mother was a tough Scottish girl. She took no shit off any other woman. She had watched her fight loads of times. You know, she was. You know, my mother's in fellowship now. My mother's 27 years clean and sober. She's a Christian woman. My parents are absolutely amazing. But growing up as a child, you know, they were rough. They were, you know, not to be messed with. You know, especially my mother.
What was your father and mother's relationship like?
It could have been. It was volatile. My dad was never the one to hit a woman. He was massive. He was a big dude. He was a bodybuilder. He was a doorman. He was a bouncer. Wasn't really a tough guy, but everyone knew him. And he was a straight talker, straight shooter, well respected guy. But my mother, on the other hand, now she was a fighting girl. She
was the crazy one.
She was hard as it come, like nails. Like, even Lee Duffy left her alone. You know, but she was close with Lee. She was very close with Lee. But Lee, yeah. But Lee Duffy she always give Lee Duffy like, Lee always give her a respect, and she always respected him. So they left her. She left her alone. But they were involved in crime. They were involved in all that stuff. Do you know what I mean? And I witnessed all that. So by the time I was 15, 16, it was just, I was born into it. I just knew what I was always going to become, and what I was always going to be known for. You know, now I realise, now this is me. I've arrived. This is who I was always meant to be. And this was a menace to society. No reputation. The hardest man in town, the hardest man in the fucking UK, if I could get there. And that was my life. That was where I was going with it. That was my passion.
Did you graduate high school?
I got kicked out of school when I was about 14, 15. Yeah, I just got kicked out. I just ended up getting kicked out for being
too many fights, too many problems,
fighting, threatening the teachers, pinching off the teachers, pinching money. Just become an absolute twat. Yeah.
So you're kicked out, and then now what do we do with ourselves?
So when I was 15, 16, I started to sell drugs. I got heavily involved in crime. Every
What age did you start using drugs?
15, 16, I started to use drugs. But bear in mind, I was a very promising footballer, soccer player. I was a really, really good soccer player, and I was in and out of clubs. I was tipped to be a professional. I was meant to be I was a really good player. I was a good player. And but by the time I was 15, 16, it was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. This was what had really gripped me, and God bless my missus. I'd met Sammy when I was 15, who's going to be my wife this year. I've been with Sammy for 23 years. I've got 3 beautiful kids to her. She fell pregnant when we were 15 as well. So she was now pregnant. I turned 16. She was still 15. I was picking her up from school. She was pregnant. It was it was mental, but I felt a lot of pressure. I felt like, right, I'm 16. I'm not a kid. I'm a man. I need to earn money. I need to do stuff that, that needs to be done to provide for my family. So I started to sell drugs. I got heavily involved in crime. All the crime outfits and the people who were running the streets, all wanted me on their side because of what I was capable of. By this time as well, I was taking steroids. I was boxing. I was kickboxing. I was a big guy. And I was 16-year-old. I was about 17, 18 stone at 16-year-old. And I was working as a doorman now, a 16-year-old. I was a busy guy. I was 16-year-old, and I was quickly becoming a menace to society. It was crazy. It was crazy.
And you said, like, when you would look in the mirror early on as a kid, you hated what you saw.
Yeah.
So I would assume that hatred is still going on, but yet you were able to meet a woman who you're still with.
Yeah.
Could you express love to her back then? Could you tell her you loved her?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. Yeah,
even though you didn't love yourself.
Yeah, of course I did. Yeah, because again, like, knowing what I am now, knowing what I know what I am today, which is, I'm an obsessive compulsive disorder. I suffer with obsession and compulsion, which is, addiction. That's what I am, and I'm an addict. And Tammy was my first female that I'd come addicted to. I was always addicted to sex, and that feel good factor of, having women around and having, drugs, women, and all that stuff, having that around. But Sammy was my main go-to, where I knew she loved me, and I was hooked on her. I was hooked on her, and I needed her, to tell me how good I was. I needed her to tell me that she loved me, and in that way I could say, right, I love you too.
She was your anchor.
Yes.
You were adrift in the sea, headed nowhere, and she would anchor you from time to
time.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, thank God that she fell pregnant when she did. I mean, we were kids having kids, but thank God that she did fall pregnant at that age, because I think we instantly knew, we're bringing life into this world now. It's going to be hard for us to separate now. And thank God that we did, because 23 years later, I'm living with her. I've got 3 other kids with her. She is my life and soul. She is my rock. She is my everything. And even more so now, after sticking by me after what I put her through. Put myself through and put her through, and she's still here. So I do believe.
So back then, when she got pregnant, was she living with her parents and you living with your parents?
Yeah. Her parents hated me as well. Her dad was an old school driver, shotgun driver. He was old school criminal as well. He was very close to Lee Duffy. He was Lee Duffy's driver, and he was one of them where he would blast you, and he was crazy. He was crazy, and he was always.
And did he come up to you when you got his daughter pregnant?
Oh, he was threatening to blow me away. He said, "I'm going to shoot you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to do it." And I was just like, "Yeah, fuck off." I had a lot of run-ins with him. I was arguing with him a lot. He loves me now.
Does he?
But back in the day, he hated me. I can only imagine, the way I was living and the name that I had. Everyone knew me. that I can't imagine any father wanting me to be with their daughter, to be fair.
Right.
It's a fucking hell. But yeah, it is what it is.
So let's so you're working as a doorman at 16, selling drugs, doing drugs, running the streets. What type of drugs are we talking? What are you getting into for yourself?
I used to sell crack cocaine, but I was heavily involved in cocaine. I wasn't really good at selling cocaine because I was my own best customer. And
Yeah, me too.
yeah, I was always sniffing my own product. But the crack
Right.
stuff, I was shotting a lot of that. We were doing all right on that. There was other street gangs that were doing it, but I was just running the show. I was just taking it off them, taking phones off them. Most of the streets in UK were run by phones in the corners. It was a mobile phone that people would run, and I would just go around taking everyone's phone, and then we would just work the line that way, And but again,
can you remember the first time you did coke?
Yeah.
Did it grab you right then?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I was 15-year-old. I was 15-year-old, and I stole it off a family member. Went in his pocket, and he had a bag. He'd come in to sleep. I went in his pocket to pinch money, and I found a bag of coke. I found a bag of coke and money. So I thought, So I sniffed the coke, and then used his money to buy more coke. And before you know it, I was fucking hooked. Yeah. It's a funny thing, innit? But I think most addicts I've ever spoke to have the same story. It becomes a Friday thing, then it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing, then it's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday thing, where you're awake 2 or 3 days, and then before you know it, you're just on it every single fucking day. And my harsh realization was, I started to, by the time I was 17 and was doing the doors, I was heavily involved in crime and drugs and guns and stuff like this. And if anyone doesn't know, guns are illegal in the UK. I think you all know that, don't you? Yeah, so it's a big charge when you're dealing with guns and stuff like that, and you get caught carrying in the UK. It's instant jail, boom, straight away. So it was a very dark and seedy thing to do on the UK streets, to be carrying weapons like that of that magnitude, and selling them and moving them around. It was a very dark, seedy thing, but it was just one of them things. We were just all used to it. And I started to get involved in underground fighting, which was like white collar boxing, unlicensed boxing, underground fighting. So I was starting to get involved in that, and I was really, really fucking good at it. And I was always a hard case. I was always good at fighting on the streets, but it was different because when you're fighting on the streets or on the doors, it's just a boom, boom, boom. You don't have a chance to think about it. There's someone to walk up to you, bum, 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 you hit him, it's over. Where now I've started to get involved in this underground fighting, where I was facing guys who had just as bad as a reputation as me from the other side of town, or even a different town or a different area in the UK, and you're thinking, right. So I started to train, I started to get involved in it, and I did fucking really well, and I made some decent money. And
did you have any fear going into those?
Always fear. Always, yeah. And I never understood that, because I never ever got frightened when I was fighting in nightclubs, or I was going to meet someone or give someone I never had fear. But then all of a sudden I had this fear of, going to meet another hard case. Whoa, what if you lose? Your reputation's down the pan here. Everyone's going to know you can get beat. But I think it was that what kept me dangerous. It was the fear that made me who I was, and I always remember my mum. She always says to me, listen, son, when you go into these fights, how do you feel? So what do you mean? She went, are you scared? I went, yeah. She went, don't ever let go of that fear. That'll keep you dangerous. And I was like, and it never left me. It never ever left me. My mum to say that to me, that just shows how, like, my mum's got that fighting spirit in it. But I'd understand the boxing trainer or another fighter saying it to you, but my mother says to me, don't ever lose that fear, son, because that fear is what will keep you being dangerous. The fear will keep you sharp. It'll keep you dangerous. And I thought, okay.
And did you lose any of those fights in the underground?
Never lost one. I had 12.
So the tough guy from the next town over who had a reputation like yours, you're beating him.
I beat everyone. I end up winning Britain's hardest doorman.
Is that where that came in?
Yeah. So I was beating everyone. I was beating everyone. I was beating these army boxers. I was beating, top doormen. I was beating, the hard case from the next town. I was beating guys who boxed all their life. I was beating some serious names. And The finals.
How did you do it if a guy's trained his whole life in boxing and you took some classes early on, your father took you to, but it's not like you
Nah,
continued. How are you doing it?
do you know what? I just believe that what I know now about fighting is I've got a God-given gift, which is a big, massive head, a big, massive chin, and just some serious power. I always knew that what I had, you can't be taught. I never panicked when I got punched. Every time I got hit, I never got hurt, I never got dropped. I never got dazed. But when I'd always watch the footage back, I think, bloody hell, that was a good shot. But I never ever felt him. I just always walked forward, I closed the distance, and when I hit him, it was just game over. It just always knocked me down.
Would you ever go into like a blackout stage
No,
when you were fighting?
no,
Just
never. No, I was always calm. I always remember, right? So I just won the Britain's Hardest Storming, and it was my 12th fight. Everyone knew who I was now, not just in the Middlesbrough area, because that's where I'm from, Middlesbrough. Not from the Middlesbrough area. Everyone was talking about me now across the UK, and people were knowing who I was. And a guy come in the changing rooms. He went, "Which one's Paul Venis?" I went, "Me, mate." He went, "I've just watched. Is that you I've just watched out there?" I went, "Yeah." He went, "You just won that title." I went, "Yeah." He went, "Where'd you box out of, son?" I went, "Nowhere." He went, "Who's taught you how to fight like that?" I went, "No one." He went, "Come here." He grabbed me like that, this old school geezer. He grabbed me and went, "Come here, let me talk to you." He said, "Right, there's my phone number." He said, "Give me a card." He said, "There's my phone number. Ring me tomorrow. You're coming to the gym. Don't take no more fights. I want you in the gym tomorrow. I want to talk to you." So I was like, okay, sounded like a serious guy. Looked the part, squash nose, rough old geezer. I thought, okay, sound. His name was Brian Smith. So I rang Brian the next day. He went, "Right, I want you to come and train with me." He says, "What you've got, Paul, you can't be taught." He said, "You've got durability and you've got power." He says, "I've seen people with big names who are hard men get in a boxing ring, get punched and just start twisting around, start panicking." He says, "What you've got, you can't be taught." So that's a God-given power you've got. So let me teach you. So I started to teach, started to learn, and I did about 6 months with him. I trained for 6 months, and it was like water off a duck's back. I was really good at it.
Now, are you still doing drugs at this time?
Yeah.
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 You're doing cocaine and going and
Yeah.
training?
So how I always explained my dark days before it got darker, I was a steroid-fueled, cocaine-sniffing, boxing, dormant madman. That's what I was. But I was only young, so the stuff hadn't took a toll on my body yet.
Right.
I was 18, 19. Still fit. Still
And we think we're invincible.
Yeah. It was only when I got to about 20, 21, when I took a fight against a guy called Wes Smith. Now, Wes Smith was a big naughty man, and he was a brilliant fighter, a brilliant boxer. He was known across all the UK scene as, they used to call him the Viking Slayer, because he was just beating these big Viking-looking men, and he was destroying them all. And I took this fight against him, and first ever fight I trained, and I absolutely wiped him out in the first round. Like a white.
And how tall was he?
He was big.
He
was 6'4". He was a couple of stone heavier than me. He was older than me. He was a fully developed, fully grown, massive geezer.
And you're how tall?
I was 5'10". 5'10", but I was.
So he's got you by 6 inches.
Yeah. Most men did. I was just big and stocky, and I was fast and powerful. And I ended up wiping him out in the first round. I absolutely beat him to a pulp in the first round. And yeah, that was my last ever fight before I went to prison. That was my last ever fight. After that, I really did start to decline. It was like everything had just went to my head. I started to use drugs more. I started to get more attention from bigger criminals, bigger money guys, more women, more everything. It was like everything had just gone super duper crazy when it come to my name, Paul Venis, which was.
Did you ever get into heroin?
It's the only drug I never took. Now, I'll tell you why it was the only. I come very close a few times to taking it, but the reason why I never took it was because I found my mother's sister. See, we'll go back a little bit here. Let me tell you something. Yeah. So my mum and her two sisters, they're recovering addicts. They were all two of my mum and her sister Linda. They're 27 years clean and sober. Now they brought Narcotics Anonymous to Middlesbrough, which is a fellowship, a 12-step program. It's a fellowship which helps addicts. Sadly, they lost the younger sister, which she was called Annette, God rest her soul. I found her. She had an heroin overdose. I was about 12, 13-year-old. I was the one who found her dead with the needle in her arm with the two kids sat around her. That was traumatic as well as a child. I always forget to mention that. But I always remember being so aware of what heroin was and what it did to my auntie, who I loved dearly. I loved my auntie Annette. I thought she was an amazing woman. And but the two kids were sat around her crying. They were like, one was 5, one was 1. They didn't have a clue what had gone on. And I walked in and found them. I had to grab them, get them out of there. I was only a kid, you know what I mean? But I was totally aware of what had happened. She died of a heroin overdose. The needle was still there. That played a massive factor in me never ever taking heroin, but I took everything else. By the time I was 20, 21, I was heavily using crack cocaine, heavily using cocaine. Now, crack was another drug that I thought I'd never ever take, but I did. The cocaine had become, not enough, if you like. It wasn't enough. I was sick of chasing that buzz. Cocaine wasn't giving me it no more. So I started to smoke crack. And that's when my life started to decline.
I used to, after I got raped, I started smoking weed instantly at 12. And from that point forward, I couldn't stay within any boundary I set for myself. Like you said, I'll never do cocaine during the week. It's just a weekend drug. Then all of a sudden you're doing it during the week. I'll never smoke crack. That's for the hardcore drug addicts. And then all of a sudden you're smoking crack. The last one was I will never, ever, ever do heroin. And then I'm doing heroin, so just no boundary. I couldn't stay within a boundary.
Someone always, when I do my talks, when I do lives and I do my talks and stuff like that, people always ask me, what was your poison? What was your main drug? And I thought, it doesn't, all of them, everything was my poison. Alcohol, any drug I could get my hands on. Heroin was only a yet, because I've come close to taking it a few times. If I never stopped when I did, I'd 100% been on it. 100% I would have, because I always got closer and closer and closer, but I never ever did take it. But it was only a yet for me. Like I hadn't took it yet, but I was always gonna if I'd never got clean when I did. Thank God for getting clean. Thank God that my mother and her sister managed to carry this message to me of serenity. A life without drugs, a life. Learn how to live as a recovering addict.
Well, to get to that point, you had to get arrested first.
Yeah.
Right?
So
how did you get arrested? And what was
after the fight with Wes Smith? After the fight with Wes Smith, my life, I was up here. I was on a high. My reputation had never been so high. The power, the control, the name that I had. Everyone knew who I was. Everyone knew who I was. Everyone wanted a piece of me. I was given money, drugs, women, anything I wanted. I could have had anything I wanted. Nothing was out of my reach. And it sort of went to my head. The only place.
How could it not?
Yeah, the only place from there was to climb. And then I started I was smoking crack heavily. At first, I started to do it sneakily. Then the gym started to slip away. Then my health started to slip away. I started to lose a lot of weight. I started to look really frail. And then I become a target. Because now I was this big name who was a shadow of himself, who was heavily on crack cocaine, who was just flat out on drugs, and I had been for a full year or two. People started to come out the woodworks. People started to challenge me. People who wouldn't have dreamed of challenging me back in the day. People who had robbed or hit or controlled before were like coming out and attacking me. And trying to get me at times at my weakest point, which it worked. Why wouldn't they? I was this one who was up here, this big, strong, powerful individual. Now, within a year, all of a sudden, I'm this frail man who's heavily on drugs, who is still trying to act the way he was when I wasn't. Do you know what I mean? I was walking in houses, I was robbing drug dealers. I was demanding money off certain people, and they were like, "Nah, Like,
No, huh?
you're not getting that. And I'm like,
They're like, look at you.
yeah. So then, but I was still managing to hold my own, and and get what I needed. But it was getting harder and harder. People were starting to move away from me instead of gravitating towards me. People were moving away from me. And before you know it, I was in a dark, lonely place. Like,
Paul, when I was using, at my heaviest, I was going like I would go week after week after week, month after month, getting like single digit hours of sleep for the week.
yeah,
Like for the whole 7 days, I'm getting 6 hours of sleep,
yeah.
just staying up.
Oh,
Are you doing the same
yeah,
thing?
yeah. So I was doing it more and more. I think it was about 3 or 4 years into my using crack cocaine. I literally looked like a head on legs. I was literally like that, like this big, massive head, all drawn in, with a tiny, frail body. You know, Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible, and I started to get sections. I was known as the crazy lunatic. Now, I wasn't known as this Paul Venis, the hard man, Paul Venis, the next Lee Duffy. I was known as Paul Venis, the crackhead, Paul Venis, the fucking lunatic, sat in the corners begging for money.
What's just so the American audience knows, what's sectioned mean?
Right. So I got the mental institute, mental hospital.
Oh yeah.
So I was spending a lot of time in and out of there now. Again, sleep deprivation, drug psychosis. I was getting sectioned a lot. I was trying to.
Who does the sectioning?
So the police will probably lock. The police would lock me up.
Police would section you.
Then they would take me to hospital because I was self-harming. I was self-harming. I was talking to people that weren't there. My missus. I wasn't allowed near my kids or my missus. Oh God, it was getting bad. It was getting bad. The last time I got sectioned. I was in there, I was in a mental institute for a couple of weeks. They treated me. I managed to get off everything. I comes out, gets back into the gym. Excuse me. And then I started to rebuild my life. But trying to anyway. But trying to do it on my own. And before you know it, I was back on steroids. I was back big. And then I was just back trying to seek revenge on anyone who was trying to get at me when I was at my lowest. And I started robbing drug dealers again. I started taking money off organised crime individuals. And before you know it, now times had changed where when I was doing it, I was a fighting man. Where now people are like, it doesn't work like that now. People were targeting me with my family with guns, and my house got shot at. They blasted all my house. And before you know it, this time around, I damned myself. I went and got a Glock 17. And I decided to go on a big rampage with this gun. And 3 days later, I got caught with a gun, and I ended up in prison for a while. I ended up doing a decent prison sentence.
And while you're in prison, did you have any did your reputation still follow you in prison? Did you have any guys trying to challenge you in there?
No. As soon as I landed in prison, within 4 or 5 weeks of being in prison, I was back to my old self. I'd put my weight back on. I was training a lot. I was eating good food. Prison in the UK is nothing like it is in America. It's you get telly, you get food, you get gym, you get everything. It's like how can I explain it? It's like a youth club for adults. Snooker tables, pool tables. It's not a bad. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't ever want to go back. It's not better than having my freedom and being at home with my wife and kids, but it's not a deterrent. It's not going to stop people from committing crime. It's, if anything, it's giving people the 4 walls, a bed, a telly, and some good meals. That's what the prison is like in the UK. And if I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it, because I did. The only time I had bad times is when the realization would set in that my wife and kids would come and visit me once a week, and when they'd leave, I couldn't go with them. That was the only issue. Other than that, prison wasn't a fucking bad place.
When I went to prison, I didn't allow any visitors just because I didn't want, I wanted to stay flatlined while I was in there. I didn't want to get my, emotions up by seeing people and then realize I'm still stuck in this hell.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't allow anybody come visit me.
You know what? It's funny you say that, because the only time I ever lashed out on any of the prisoners or the prison guards was the day when my wife
after a visit.
after a visit, and I'd go back like a bear with sore head and I would literally be on tender hooks. As soon as anyone had said anything to me, I'd be like, because I was in a mood. I wasn't very nice to be around. As soon as my wife and kids had left me, I wasn't very nice to be around. I just need to get in my cell, lock the door behind me, and just leave me alone. I'll be all right tomorrow. But
it got out when I was in prison. Guys find out what you're there for. So it got out that I had killed a pedophile. So I didn't have any problems with inmates, but the guards in prison were just treated you like shit. And the worst of the worst were the female guards. And they were getting knocked out by inmates left and right because they treated everybody like crap. And how were the guards in prison? Were they cool too?
Yeah, you know what?
No problems there.
You know what? So as early in my sentence, I started to realise what a fool, what a dink, what an idiot I'd been in life. Some of the choices that I'd made. And bear in mind, when I went to prison, my mum was already like 8-9 years deep into recovery. She'd had a relationship with God now. My dad was a relationship with God. My parents were absolutely amazing people. And early through my prison sentence, they'd come to visit me and they said, look, like, we are happy to see you in here, son. Like, we can finally go home and go to sleep. We don't have to worry about how we're going to wake up tomorrow. Is our son going to get shot? Is he going to be stabbed? Is he going to kill someone? And because we were hearing all these stories about you, Paul, we knew what type of person you were. And now you're in here, we're like, we know where he is. We know he's safe. And that was a realisation. And even when my missus said it, and that was a real tough pill to swallow, because I thought, wow, like these two people have turned their lives around. They absolutely love me. I've always been loved. I've always had the best of stuff, and they've always cared for me. Yet I'm treating them like this, and then same with my missus as well. I was like 20, 22, 23 now, and she was still coming to visit me in prison, still having my back, still telling me that she loved me and that she wanted to be with me, still telling me how much of a great guy she knew I was deep down. And yet I just couldn't give her it. So I was like, I need to do something about this, and so I started to go to the library, I started to read, I started to do a bit of soul searching. I wanted to be comfortable in my own skin, because I spoke about it when I was a kid and all that, not being comfortable, feeling less than, always knew that there's something wasn't quite right in here. And I never knew what it was. In fact, I just thought all kids were like that every kid feels different. Every kid doesn't, must feel like this. Every kid must want to die sometimes, because that's what I always struggled with. And doing the soul searching in prison and, latching onto religions, having a look at spirituality, reinformed characters. And that's when I found a book about this guy, Shane Taylor. I opened a book, Reinformed Characters, Ex-Criminals Who Give Their Lives to God, or something like that it was called. And I was reading through it, and I seen this story, and it was about a guy called Shane Taylor. Now, I knew Shane Taylor from back in the day. Shane was from my town. Well, he wasn't from my town, but he'd moved to my town. And he was a fucking lunatic. Like, oh, my hairs are standing up talking about him. Like, he was one. Like, I have never, ever, ever been face to face with a man and took a step back. And he was the only man that ever made me go, yeah, Paul, I think you need to
hold on a second.
Yeah. Because bear in mind, he had a big old fucking blade in his hand.
Now you're shaking down drug dealers.
Yeah.
You're shaking down organized crime figures. Yeah. Those guys never made you blink.
Nah.
But Shane Taylor made you blink.
Yeah, it was just his eyes. It was honestly, his eyes spoke 1,000 words. His eyes were like that, and he just used to look right at you. And all he said to me was, "If you take one more step forward, I'm going to stick this in your fucking neck." And I just looked at him like that, and I thought, "Yeah, he definitely will." Him like, I just knew. I thought he's definitely wanted to. He wanted to. It wasn't a threat. He actually wanted me to come forward. He wanted to stab me. I could see that. He had this smile on his face. Yeah, I'll kill you. And I was like, yeah, I think he will. Like, and I went, okay, no problem. I said, look, I'm splitting this fight up. You don't need to stab me. I'm splitting it up. He went, yeah, all right, Sam, no problem. So I split the fight up. One was his cousin and one was my friend. So I split him up. And then I started to see him dotting around Middlesbrough, around our area and all that. And he would just stop and stare at us all. And he would stop and he'd do this. He'd go, no, stare at me. And he'd go. And I'd just be looking at him across the road and I think, like a couple of my pals would go, hey, who's he? Who's he looking at? And I'd just go, ignore him. Something wrong with him. There's something wrong with him, ignore him. Because there was something wrong with him. He definitely was, he was just a lunatic. Like, he was just off it. He was just crazy. Didn't care whether he lived or died. He was just mental. And I always remember giving him a wide berth. And I always remember, not really wanting to run in with him because I just thought, that man is a ninja. He's an assassin. He's not right.
So you read a book about him in the library in prison? I'm
reading the story about him and his pictures in the book, smiling and dead happy. I'm looking at him in this book, and his eyes had changed. His picture in the book, he was totally different. And I was like, I need to reach out to him. And as I started to read his story more, his address was in the book. Like, there was a letter of an address in the book, and I thought, wow. So I written to him. I don't know if you remember me, yada, 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 like, how you doing? Just read your story, I'm blown away. And he wrote straight back to me, can I come and visit you? I says, yeah. So you come and visit me. And he come in, and he was like, he was massive. He was a big ginger guy, big, tall ginger guy. And he was quite thin at the time. But this time around, when he come visit me, he was dead big, he was dead smartly dressed, and he was smiling, and he had these dead caring eyes. And I just looked at his eyes like that, and I thought, wow, the depth's gone out of his eyes. Like this look had gone. Like this scary, evil, devilish look had gone off his face. It was like he had these big caring eyes with this big caring smile. And he sat at my table, he went, hello, brother. And I went, do you remember me? He went, yeah, of course I do. I remember you. And then we just hit it off. And what I loved about him as well, he never really preached to me because he was a Christian. He only ever spoke about Jesus when I asked him about him. He only ever spoke about spirituality when I asked about it. He just always wanted to know how I was. Do I need anything? I'm always going to be here for you, brother. He's always just talking to me like that. And whenever I asked a question, he would answer it. And I just loved him.
So the guy who you looked into his eyes and saw the devil.
The devil.
Saw evil.
Let me tell you something about this guy.
Someone who had no...
Let me tell you something about him, right? So Shane's story was not long after I'd had this running with him, he stabbed two people up. He stabbed one in the brain, one in the head. The knife come out of his face. And whilst he was on the run for stabbing this one guy, he stabbed two other people. And then he took another guy hostage, and he took a shop hostage. Like, he went on a proper mad rampage and started stabbing people, nearly killed 3 people. And then whilst he was in prison, he ended up next. I don't know if you've ever heard of a prisoner called Charles Bronson. You've heard of a Charles?
I have from looking into your story. I've stumbled upon Charlie Bronson.
Charlie Bronson is inside a prison. I think he's number 1 deadliest prisoners in the UK. Shane was number 2. Shane was in a prison next door to Charles Bronson. Shane ended up in a prison, inside a fucking prison. But he ended up in prison stabbing. Shane's the reason why they don't do coffee jars in the UK now in prisons. They give you bags, they give you sachets. They used to give you coffee jars, but Shane smashed one and stabbed a couple of screws up. Went on a rampage in prison, took a few people hostage, and this was the magnitude of the craziness that Shane had in him. To have him sat across a table telling me that Jesus was real, that he loves me, that he loves everyone, that it was just mind blowing. It was mind blowing. I was looking at him, and I instantly knew, like, part of me had just flipped upside down and just thought, there has to be a God. Like,
if they could change this animal,
if this man,
if this man God do for
me, telling me how much he loves me, how much he loves his wife, how much he loves his kids, like the type of life that he was living. Like, I was blown away. I was in awe. I just thought, wow,
this is the guy who just was begging you to take one more step so he could stab you in the neck.
Yeah, mate. Do you know what, as well? I always remember talking to him about that episode, about that situation. And I says to him, do you remember that? And he went, yeah. He said, I do. I remember it. I says, where did you get that knife from? He went, I had about 6 of them on me, Paul. He said, I used to, like when you get kitchen knives from the shop where you roll them all out and you've got the small kitchen knife, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. He said, I used to have one of them around my waist. So I used to have them all around my waist. And I said, well, I remember you pulling that knife out and smiling. He went, Paul, I wanted to stab you. He said, I was even thinking about just stabbing you anyway. I went, really? He went, yeah. He said, every ounce of me wanted to just plunge you. I wanted to kill you. In my head, I'm thinking, imagine I kill Paul Venis here right now. And I was thinking, fucking hell.
And then now the guy's sitting across the table at you,
Yeah,
telling
yeah,
you about God
yeah.
and Jesus.
So
Crazy.
it is. And all the way through my prison sentence, Shane always written to me. He always sent me gifts. He always come to visit me, and when I got out of prison, my prison, there wasn't much to tell about my prison life. I never really beat anyone. I never really did anything bad. Everyone knew who I was. I was in a local jail, and I just did my time and I got out. You know what I mean? I just did it as easy as possible, and I just got out. And when I got out, I knew I couldn't go back to how I was. I just couldn't. I couldn't afford to. My wife was on the verge of losing. I was on the verge of losing my wife. My kids. I was having social services and social workers involved in my kids' relationship and all that, just in case, because I was getting shot at before I went to prison. So they were like, look, we can't have you around your family in case these people are still targeting you. They still want you dead. So I had to literally work hard to get back home and build a relationship with my kids and my wife again. And when I got home, I just knew I had to change. I had to do something different, and what I did was I got straight into fellowship, which is a Narcotics Anonymous, which is a 12-step program. It's ANA. Have you ever heard of Alcohol Anonymous?
Oh yeah, it's huge over here.
Yeah, well, I know it is because I listen to seminars and talks all the time, and all the American ones are always the best. Yeah, the YouTube videos of people talking about being an addict and all that. They're amazing. They really are. All American ones are amazing. And I never looked back. I just got heavily involved in it, Clark, and I just thought, you know what? I need to give myself a chance. I need to focus on, building a better version of myself. So when I got involved in NA, I never looked back. I was hearing things like, look, you'll have a life beyond your wildest dreams. You'll be free.
Paul, when I was locked up, I said the same exact thing to myself. I said, I can't go back living like the animal I was living.
Yeah.
Like I got to go in a new direction, and I'm willing to do anything and everything to go in that direction. Yeah. And that's what you told yourself.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And look, like I tried to get clean for my Sammy. I tried to get clean for my kids, and it just never worked. I had to get clean for me. Doing the work on myself in prison and seeing what I was, I quickly realised that, you know what, Paul, you've got something wrong with you, and that's not a cop-out. It's not a cop-out. I just wasn't normal. I knew I wasn't normal. I knew I was different. I was cut from a different cloth. I knew I was born different. And I'm glad I did the work what I did, especially in NA, because, writing all the personal inventories that I did, going back through my life as a child, seeing where everything went wrong. What went wrong for me was just learning how to think. I quickly realised that there's a part of my brain that's just not wired up right. I was always destined to be obsessed. I was always destined to take drugs. I was always destined, to be a fucking lunatic because of this. Now, I quickly learned that through recovery and through fellowship and through my Lord and Saviour, Jesus Christ, that I realised that I was born an addict. I was born with this illness, which is mental health. It's addiction. I was born with it. That's my opinion, by the way, Clark. I know people have different views on that, especially in fellowship. But I do believe that I was born with a screw loose, 100%. How can you explain that? Being a child, from my earliest memory, being 4, 5, 6-year-old, laying in bed, wondering what it'd like to be to die. Not feeling comfortable being ginger, wondering why I've got 2 different coloured eyes, and am I a monster? Not wanting to be here, wondering what it'd be like to die as a child. Like, I didn't know that wasn't normal. Not every child, no child should be thinking like that. But yet, here I was, being a child, a 5, 6-year-old, wondering what it'd be like to die. Falling to sleep, hoping that I didn't wake up the next morning. For no reason. This was before I was properly getting bullied. I didn't understand why. But doing the work that I did through fellowship and through NA and through becoming spiritual and building a relationship with God, I was always told, like, look, Paul, it's not your fault. You were born with this stuff. This screw loose that you had in your head was always destined to have you, being a fucking crazy bastard. It was only a matter of time before you found something that filled that void, that pushed that screw in to go, now I've arrived. Now I'm normal. But in hindsight, I was never going to be normal. But fellowship gave me that bridge to a normal living. When I started to work a program, I started to do the 12 steps, and I started to build a relationship spiritually, I started to feel normal. I started to.
Did you go back to anybody you had, shaken down over the years or beat up and apologize?
Yeah,
Did you do that?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm friends with some of them. I'm friends with some of them. But
yeah.
yeah, some of them have listened to my. See, because I'm a big. Well, I don't want to say I'm an advocate for it, but I don't like to. I don't like to say that. But I talk a lot about mental health and addiction now online. I talk a lot. Like most of my social media platforms, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, I promote mental health and addiction awareness. That's what I do. And I'll openly speak about anything, and anyone is welcome into my DMs, regardless of whatever relationship we've had in the past or whatever relationship we have now. If you've got an issue with drugs and you want to stop, message me. You just message me. I'll try my best to carry a message to you. Um,
Is there still anybody threatening you, like from back in the day, who wants revenge still?
yes, yes,
Oh yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Which I won't go into too much, but yeah, I
right.
still get threatened. Um, I'll tell you a funny story anyway. So the James English podcast that I did, I don't know if you've seen that one, the James English. The,
No.
so I did a James.
Oh, the podcast.
Yeah, so I did a podcast.
Yeah, yeah,
I did a
yeah,
podcast
yeah.
with a guy called James English, and he's like the biggest YouTuber in the UK, basically the biggest podcaster in the UK. Did mad numbers, and I spoke about. I went into depth about a score that I did, about a deal that I just took over. I just turned up, ran the deal, robbed everyone on the deal, and left. And it was some serious money and some serious cargo. And I spoke about it on the podcast, and by the time it got aired, I had some naughty people ringing me going, "That was my deal. That was my money. That was my stuff. You're dead. I'm going for you." Yeah, 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 yeah. And I was like, "Oh shit." I was like, I tried to listen. I was like, "Listen, brother, like, look, that you're talking like fucking 15 years ago, mate. I'm not in that life no more. We don't give a fuck. That was our stuff. And we've been looking for you. We want to know that was." And I was like, "Well, all I can say is sorry, pal. Bye bye." Do you know what I mean? Like, what? I mean, don't get me wrong. Today's world that I live in, I'm a law-abiding citizen now. I'm a family man. The stuff that I live by, the morals that I have now today, are far from that type of lifestyle. So when I had these people ringing me, I was a little bit concerned, to say the least. I was like, shit, like this could be serious. But thank God that it never got serious. And then
What keeps you on the path you're on now?
so
Obviously,
so when I got out of prison, I got involved with fellowship, and I started
yep.
to build a relationship with God, and I turned pro. I turned pro K1 kickboxing. I got everything involved in Muay Thai and K1 kickboxing, and I had a good boxing background, but I just fell in love with K1 kickboxing. Absolutely fell in love with it. I got out of prison with no money, no house, no fuck all. I was really, really struggling. Me and my missus were at food bank. We were struggling to pay the bills, and a gym owner, he says, "Look, I know you are. Do you want to come to the gym? You can use our gym free of charge. Keep on the right track. Don't be committing no crime. Get in the gym with us. You can use it for free. You can even fight for us." So I was like, "Okay, let's go." So I walks in the gym, starts training, fell in. They were doing loads of different disciplines: MMA, boxing, K1, and I just fell in love with K1 leg kicks. I absolutely loved it. I just thought, wow, these leg kicks are fucking brutal. So I started to train in K1. And I'd only been doing it about 6 months, Clark. About 6 months I was into it. And there was a couple of heavyweights in the gym, and I used to get roughed up by, and I was sparring with them and all that. But I knew them, so we didn't really try and kill each other. It was just, they were teaching me, sort of thing. And there was this one guy who travelled from across the fucking country, and he was a world champion kickboxer. And he comes in the gym, and he just wipes all these heavyweights out, wipes them all out in the space of a minute. So they looked at me and they went, "Do you want to jump in?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'll jump in. I'll get in with him." So I jumps in, gets in with him. Bear in mind, he's just wiped all these K1 kickboxers out who were ranked as well, pros. I'd never had a fight in K1. I was just a rough cunt. And I get in there and fucking smashes him. Drops him, hurts him, buries him, like levers him for a full 5 rounds. I was even going back to my corner, and the cornerman going, "Power down. Stop.
Go easy on him.
Take it easy. Take it easy. You can fight him." And I remember talking to him going, "You're going to turn me pro. Turn me pro." And they're like, "Well, turn you pro. Chill. Take it easy on him. Stop hurting him." So I was just going out, toying with him. This guy went to Italy, won a world champion.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
And after that, I just turned pro. And I took it really serious. And I lived and breathed it. I managed to land, I get my name out there as a K1 kickboxer, I land sponsors, people started getting more interested in me. I was drug free, I was crime free, I was living and breathing this fighting life. I had my wife and kids backing me, everything was mint. And not only that, I had my Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ in my corner as well. And I won everything. I won everything on a British level. For 3 or 4 years, I was just flat out fighting. And I ended up with a very good record, 32 fights, 31 knockouts.
32 and 0.
Yeah, 32 fights with 31 knockouts. Only ever went the distance once. I ended up number 2 in the rankings. The guy who was number 1 had only been beat by me. He was dodging me like hell for that number 1 spot. I don't blame him because I did knock him out in the first round when early in the rankings. And again, like I said at the beginning, like Glory K1 messaged me. Now, Glory K1 is that's the 6-figure deal. That's the big money deal. You sign for them, you've made it. It's the UFC of kickboxing. And that was my target. And I sent them all my details. They emailed me, look, we're interested. What have you got planned? We've seen everything. We followed you. We're massively interested in signing you. So I was like, get in. Sends them all my details, sends them everything that I had, my passport, my driver's license, everything. And then within a week, they messaged me and says, we're so sorry, we can't touch you. I was like, why? They were like, you've got firearms on you. You've got a firearms ban. You went to prison for firearms. I says, yeah, but that was like 3 years ago. They went, yeah, you need a 10-year clean slate before we can even consider getting you over into the States. I was like, really? They were like, yeah. So I quit. I stopped. I'd had enough. I just thought, wow, like my head fell off a little bit, Clark, if I'm being honest. It was a real kick in the teeth. I really took a step back. It was a big, massive step back in my life because I ended up falling off because I was clean. I was clean and sober for multiple years, nearly 5 or 6 years. And when I left fighting, it was about 5 or 6 years into my fighting career. No, 4 years into it, then 2 years I've left fighting, and I just lost myself. For the 2 years, I was really struggling, holding on to my fingertips. I had a strong relationship with God. I was still in fellowship, but I was just really, really struggling to keep it together, and I ended up falling off the wagon. I ended up using again. I ended up drinking, I ended up sniffing, and I ended up going on a couple of benders, falling off the wagon. But, hey, listen, I'm only human. There were massive lessons for me now. I'm back in recovery now. I've been in recovery for 11 years. Been out of prison for 11 years. I've been in recovery for 11 years. I've only ever been out and relapsed 4 times, which is a massive, massive statement for me. That's a massive improvement in my lifestyle. So right. Yeah, I'm very grateful for where I'm at now. So
what's a day in your life like now? What do you have a morning routine, a nighttime routine? What do you do each day?
So I'm fighting again now. I've just signed a 4-fight contract for the BKFC. The BKFC, which is owned by Conor McGregor. It's a bare knuckle boxing organisation, the fastest and biggest sport grown in the world. It's massive in America, the BKFC. So my day.
That's badass. That's badass.
Bro. Yeah. Bear in mind as well, mate. I hadn't fought for like 5 years, so I had my first. I come out of retirement beginning of this year. I had my first fight back beginning of this year. I knocked a guy out in the first round. Now I've got my next fight in 5 weeks, which is in June. It's June the 8th. Yeah, I'm 1 minute down. Sorry about that. So I've got my BKFC debut 8th of June. I'm headlining the show. Main event, which is massive for me. But since my last relapses, like I spoke to you about there, I've been clean for multiple years now. I've always trained. I've always been involved in fellowship. A day in, Paul, is I wake up in the morning, first thing I do is I get this right. I meditate. I make sure that I'm thinking positive. Because if I wake up in the morning, my addiction, my disease, my mental health, my obsessions have been sat on the end of my bed, waiting for me to wake up to grab me by the throat. So what I have to do is I have to realize that. I have to see that. So I instantly meditate. I instantly pray. I pray to my Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ, and that takes about 20 minutes. I thank him. I give all my gratitude. I pray for my loved ones, and I pray for the still suffering addict. And then I do a gratitude list. I write every single morning. I write 10 things down that I'm grateful for. I read them back to myself. And that way, the reason I do that is because I have this head that obsesses around things that I don't have. I tend to worry about the things that I don't have instead of focusing on what I do have. You know, so the gratitude list helps me stay grateful for what I have. You know, it's the roof over my head, my family intact, and clothes on my back, and food in the cupboards. It's all I need. You know, that way I am the richest man alive. You know, then I'll hit the gym. You know, once I've been to the gym, it's plain sailing from there. Straight away, my health, my wealth, everything is intact. And then it's just family oriented after that. You know, whatever their need, whatever.
So let me just get this straight. You wake up, you meditate first thing in the
Yes.
morning. You pray.
Yeah.
You give thanks.
Yes.
You write 10 things each morning that you're grateful for,
Yeah.
and you read it back to yourself.
Yeah.
You go hit the gym.
Yeah.
Spend time with your family.
Yeah. Every day. Every day. I'm one of them now because I'm blessed to have the life that I have, which is, you know, social media. Social media is more or less paying my bills now. You know, I have sponsors that help me out every month. I'm fighting again, so I'm very family oriented. I can get all that stuff in on the morning and I hit the gym, and then I can get home and I can get my kids ready for school. You know, my little girl, she's autistic. You know, she needs a lot of attention, so I'm able to help my wife with the little girl. You know, and then, you know, my wife as well, she's such an amazing woman as well. She's, you know, she being able to spend time with her and you know, yeah, life's really good, mate. And
Can you believe the guy that was smoking crack for days on end and beating people up and shaking down crime figures and drug dealers is now waking up calmly, meditating and praying in the morning? Is that not amazing?
It's a life beyond my wildest dreams. You know, I always remember walking into fellowship, which is Narcotics Anonymous, and I was always told, if you work this to the best of your ability, you'll have a life beyond your wildest dreams. Now, when I first heard that, I thought someone was going to give me a bag of money. I thought someone was going to shot me in a plane and take me to Barbados. I didn't know what to think. My head just ran away with that. I just thought, now these people are going to save me. These people are going to help me. But I totally get it. Totally get it. You know, just waking up in the morning, not obsessing around drugs. You know, just waking up in the morning and having a choice. You know, having a choice, you know, waking up in the morning, having the bravery to pray, you know, having God in my life, something that I would never, at one point in my life, I thought I was God. You know, I was a massive atheist, you know, to be able to wake up in the morning and have the things that I have and do the things that I am, you know, do the things that I do, you know, having humbleness in my heart, having faith in a higher power, you know, having gratitude, all, you know, no denial running through my veins, all this stuff I never ever pictured for me, you know, and then.
So you were a complete atheist throughout your
Yeah,
life.
Yeah.
You would even tell guys you're beating up, I am God.
I literally thought I was God, you know, my way or the highway, you know. When I ended up in prison, I was shocked that I was in prison. I thought, how dare that? What am I doing here? You know, I was like my way of thinking was so deluded. You know, I was in that much of a fantasy land. Like I didn't know what was real and what wasn't most of the time. You know, I always remember getting asked to do podcasts, and I had to just tell my life to like friends and family and go, "Am I right in saying that? Did that really happen?" And they're like, "Yeah, that happened." Because I wasn't sure what happened and what didn't. No, because of the delusions and the fantasy world that I was living in most of the times through addiction and drugs. I had to really, really work on my story and think, did that happen or not? You know, but yeah, like, you know, having been in that fantasy world and in that fucking land of fucking Neverland, you know, it's like, what's real and what isn't. Now to know when I wake up in the morning and to know that, you know, drinking my coffee, looking out, appreciating the rain, or seeing the blue sky, or listening to the bird. I know it sounds so cliche, but listening to the birds sing, seeing how green the grass is, seeing how blue the sky is, all that shit that sounds.
Same thing here, bro. Same
Yeah,
thing.
but it's funny, innit? Because I always remember people saying that to me, and I used to think, oh, fuck off. Yo, go away, you fucking bullshit. The sky's blue, the grass is green, so fuck off. Do you know what I mean? But now I see it. You know, having the ability to be comfortable in my boredom. Now, that's a massive thing for me, Clark. You know, how many times have you been sat there flicking through Netflix thinking, fucking, I'm bored shitlessly, there's nothing on. But then when I get that feeling now, I think, I'm bored. And I don't want to use drugs. I'm bored and I don't want to commit crime. I'm bored and I don't want to do anything fucking crazy. I'm actually comfortable being bored. Now, I've worked hard at that. I've worked hard to get to that point. So when I'm bored, I'm fucking ecstatic. I really am. It's a weird feeling. It's a weird feeling.
I feel like I'm talking into a mirror. It's the same stuff.
This is you touched on it. You know how me and you become together for Instagram and that. And I commented on one of your videos. I seen you talking, and I just again one of the hairs are standing up again. When I hear stuff like stuff coming from yourself and other people that I follow as well that talk this lingo, that absolutely get this. You know, it's the similarities. You know, it's the reflection bouncing off you into me. You know, that's a massive thing that I live by, because, you know, and if you aren't talking your stuff and getting your message out there, Clark, then me and you wouldn't be sat here now, you know, and that's why I'll forever be grateful for people like yourself. And that's why I'll forever find the courage to be able to tell my story on my social media platforms, because of people like yourself, you know, basically my predecessors. You're our predecessors. That's what you are. Having the bravery to be able to go, you know what, I did this, and I ended up here. You know, and that's how I come across your story. And I thought, wow, blow me away. Do you know what I mean? Because, you know, sometimes I can self-doubt. Yeah, I'm nearly done. Sometimes I can doubt myself for some of the stuff that I talk about online. You know, but God has a funny way of going, you know what? Like when I walk away from certain things that I've said, and then before you know it, I'll receive a message and going, I'm really glad you said that there, mate. I can relate to that. You know, off a stranger. And I'm thinking, oh, I was doubting myself for saying that. Now this one person needed to hear that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I believe I was that one person that needed to see that video that you put out. You know, I remember like it was yesterday because I commented on it and it was amazing, Clark. So yeah, it was a real pleasure to stumble across your videos and your content, mate. Absolutely amazing.
So if somebody wants to find you, it's Paul Venis on Instagram.
So my new Instagram is Paul Venis Official 22. Yeah, I've got 2 TikTok accounts, which is Paul Venis, and I have a YouTube account, which is Paul Venis K1 Limited.
And in 5 weeks, you have your first bare knuckle fight?
In 5 weeks, I have my first bare knuckle fight against a Bulgarian called Stanov Tabakov. Yeah, hopefully, first fight of many, and hopefully make a good career of it. So see where we go.
All right. I can't wait to see that.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much.
Hey, bro, it's been a pleasure, man. You know, our lives, had a lot of similarities to them, and it's by the grace of God, we're still here, man.
That's it, mate. God bless that, mate. Awesome. Amen to that, brother.
All right, man. Take care,
bro.
Yeah,
big love, Clark. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, mate. Take care.
And there you have it, everybody. Paul Venis from Great Britain, a complete maniac on the streets, terrorizing the community, and now has faith, prays every morning, meditates, exercises, and is a family man. Any one of us can turn it around. I've done it. Paul's done it. Every one of the guests I've had on has done it. Don't struggle in life and succumb to the grave too early. We'll see you next week. Peace.